Did you know it's possible to get rich using only the salary you already have? This phrase seems bold, even provocative, but stay with me for a few moments because what I'm going to tell you now completely changes the way you see money. You don't need to earn more to start building wealth. You need to see what you already have in a new way. Now imagine the following scenario. A millionaire, someone used to making strategic decisions and turning every penny into opportunity, wakes up today with exactly the same salary you receive. It's not a poetic metaphor. It's as if life switched places with you for a day. He opens the statement and sees the same amount that falls into your account every month. Most people, if they went through this, would panic. They would rush to ask for a raise, try to work overtime, look for a loan, or complain about fate. But this millionaire doesn't do any of that. He observes the situation calmly, almost as if he already expected a challenge of this size at some point in life. And that's where the big difference begins. Instead of reacting with despair, he activates what we call the emergency financial protocol, a way of thinking that most people have never learned. For him, the salary is not the problem. The lack of strategy is. He looks at that amount and instead of thinking, it's not possible, he thinks, how do I make this work for me? This mindset shift is what separates those who live putting out fires from those who truly build wealth. While many see limitation, he sees possibility. While many spend on impulse, he acts with purpose. While many look for shortcuts, he follows a method. And it's precisely this method, which fits in the salary you already have, that we're going to break down throughout the video. When this person finds themselves with your salary, they don't react as most would. They don't think about despair, nor about rushing to ask for a raise, nor about seeking a loan to try to patch holes. They take a deep breath and face that amount as a starting point, not as a sentence. Instead of focusing on the size of the salary, they focus on what can be done with it. Their first move is not emotional, it's strategic. Even before thinking about cutting expenses or organizing bills, they seek to understand the situation clearly. They know there's no financial change without awareness, and therefore make a calm, almost clinical analysis of their own reality. They observe money with the maturity of someone who has already learned not to be carried away by impulses. And here's the big difference. While many look at a small salary and see only limitations, this person sees hidden possibilities. They know that financial life doesn't change when the salary grows. It changes when the mindset changes. Therefore, they face this challenge as a chance to reorganize the path. They understand something most people never realize. People who maintain a poor mentality will continue trapped in the same cycles, even earning more. And people who develop a growth mindset manage to advance even earning little. That's why they don't despair. They use the salary as a training ground. Instead of saying it's not possible, they ask themselves, how do I make this work in my favor? Instead of thinking about what they don't have, they focus on what they can build from what already exists. This person treats the salary not as an end, but as the beginning of a choice. And that's exactly where the turnaround happens. They take control. They understand that money is a tool, and that tools can be used in completely different ways, depending on who uses them. Therefore, before applying any financial technique, they make the most powerful decision of all, changing the way they see their own money. They know that wealth doesn't begin in the account, it begins in the head. And it's at this point that this journey gains strength. Because when the mindset aligns with purpose, even a modest salary transforms into fuel to build a new life. And if up to here you've already realized that this way of thinking makes sense, that perhaps no one has ever explained money to you this way, then do the following. Like this video right now. It's not just a button. It's a sign that this content is opening your eyes and helping you see your salary in a totally new way. This way, you show me that you're together in this transformation and still help this video reach other people who need to hear exactly this. When this person begins to reorganize their own mind to deal with the salary they now have, they realize something many people prefer to ignore. The real financial difficulty is not only in the amount that comes in, but in the behavior that repeats month after month. That's why so many people earn more but continue living trapped in the same squeeze. They receive a raise, and instead of using this new money to build stability, they increase expenses, take on bigger commitments, and create habits that drain everything they earn. This person knows the problem is not the lack of money, but the automatic way it's used. They observe how many people follow the same pattern. The more they earn, the more they spend. And this transforms poverty into a cycle, not a number. It's not the bank account that defines the situation. It's the behavior repeated without awareness. They see clearly that living on the edge is not a condition imposed by the salary, but by the habit of spending without intention. And that's why, even when someone has the chance to earn more, they continue feeling the same weight, the same feeling of lack, the same financial tiredness. This person, on the contrary, refuses to enter this cycle. They don't allow a higher salary to automatically transform into more bills to pay. They understand that stability is born from discipline, not from income. They see the mistakes so many people make and decide they won't repeat any of them. Their mindset is simple and powerful. It doesn't matter how much money comes in. What matters is what you do with it. And that's what prevents them from repeating the patterns that keep so many people stuck in the same place for years. When this person decides to follow a different path from what most do, they understand that the first real, concrete, visible step in financial life is not earning more. It's cutting what should never have entered the routine. They know that when the salary's tight, there's no room for waste. Every decision matters, and every choice shapes the future. Therefore, they assume something many people avoid, making a deep clean in expenses. They look at the month and realize how many small decisions transform into big sabotages. That delivery that seems harmless, but repeats several times unnecessarily. The forgotten subscriptions, hidden on the card, that continue charging month after month. The expensive coffee bought every day, not because it's essential, but because it became an automatic habit. And then they make a decision that requires courage, cutting everything that is not indispensable. They know this has nothing to do with suffering or deprivation, but with strategy. It's a conscious restart in which every expense comes to have a real purpose. They understand this phase is not forever. It's a period of reconstruction, and to rebuild, they need to open space. This person begins to look at money with more respect, as if training new muscles, and each useless expense eliminated transforms into a brick removed from a wall that prevented their growth. Austerity at this moment is not punishment. It's freedom. It's the act of removing from the path everything that silently sucks away the chance of change. When this person begins to realize where money really goes, they discover a silent enemy that brings down many people. Ant expenses, those small amounts that seem so harmless that no one pays attention, but that, added up, can destroy an entire month's budget without the person noticing. They begin to notice that it's not a big purchase that unbalances financial life, but a sequence of small automatic choices. A snack here, a little thing there, a paid app they didn't even know was active, an impulse purchase made because it was on sale. Alone, each of these expenses seems insignificant. Together, they form a whole. And for the first time, this person understands that it's not the price that matters, but the frequency, because $10 every day is $300 a month. And $300 a month is $3,600 a year. In other words, an amount that could be building something but is evaporating. So they decide to act. They begin to observe their own movements, almost like an investigator analyzing clues. And as they notice these invisible slips, they make a firm decision. Eliminate all of them. Not some, not the biggest ones, but all that are not really necessary. They reorganize their priorities and make clear what is essential: food, housing, and transportation. Nothing beyond this should consume their energy or money in this phase. Everything that doesn't put food on the table, doesn't keep a roof over their head, or doesn't take them to work is temporarily set aside. And by doing this, this person discovers something surprising. There's much more money within their own salary than they imagined. It was just being drained slowly in a constant rain of small choices. Identifying and eliminating ant expenses is not just a financial adjustment, it's an awakening. After eliminating the small and silent expenses, this person looks at the big expenses, those that really shape the entire month: housing and transportation. They know that if these two pillars are not balanced, everything else crumbles, because these are precisely the fixed expenses that weigh and most trap people in a tight life. So they analyze, honestly and without shame, whether the place where they're living really fits in the salary they now have. Many don't have the courage to do this. They prefer to maintain an appearance, insist on a rent higher than they can pay, or live in a neighborhood that consumes money that could be being invested in the future. But this person doesn't fall into this error. They know that living above their own standard is one of the greatest thieves of freedom. They consider alternatives that many people avoid out of pride: seeking cheaper rent, sharing the house with someone, moving to a more accessible neighborhood, or negotiating better conditions. Not because they're regressing, but because they're building a solid foundation to advance. They understand that there's no real financial growth without first correcting what weighs every month. The same goes for transportation. They observe how much time and how much money they spend to get around. They realize that in some cases, owning a car has become a walking debt. In others, daily transportation is so expensive it eats part of the salary mercilessly. And then they question themselves, what's the smartest way, not the most comfortable, to move around day to day now? It could be public transportation, it could be bicycle, it could be walking, it could be selling the car and taking a huge weight off the budget. And by making these adjustments, they discover something precious. Saving on housing and transportation is not just saving money, it's recovering quality of life. Because by relieving these expenses, they breathe better, live with less pressure, and gain energy to focus on what really matters. But there's an important care that this person also understands. They don't sacrifice precious hours of their own life just to save a few dollars. They know it's no use living too far from work just because rent is cheap, if that means losing 3 or 4 hours in traffic every day. Smart economy doesn't destroy the routine, it improves it. The change here is not just financial, it's strategic, it's sensible, it's mature, and these adjustments create space for something few people can do with a tight salary: save money. After readjusting everything that was weighing on the budget, this person finally reaches the point many people consider impossible: saving money, even receiving a low salary. And it's here that the real transformation begins, because they discover that saving is not about how much is left over, but about when you decide to save. Most wait for the end of the month, but when the end comes, there's nothing left to set aside. That's why so many people believe they'll never be able to save, because they're trying to do it in the wrong order. This person, on the contrary, changes the logic. As soon as the salary drops, before thinking about bills, before making any move, they separate an amount, even if small, and save it. It doesn't matter if it's $5, $10, or $20. The exact amount is not the point. What matters is the discipline, the ritual, the symbolic gesture of telling their own brain, first, I build my security, then I pay the rest. They understand that saving a little every month won't make them rich immediately, but will build something no high income can buy: emotional stability. It's this reserve, even small, that prevents despair when something unexpected appears. It's what creates the feeling of control, and it's what inspires discipline for the next steps. Because by repeating this habit month after month, this person begins to realize they don't depend on luck, don't depend on miracles, don't depend on anyone. They depend only on constancy. The most interesting thing is that by developing this habit, they begin to see possibilities where before they only saw limitations. Saving a little bit every month creates a kind of silent confidence, as if they were building a shelter while learning to deal with storms. This small gesture changes their relationship with money. Instead of treating the salary as something that evaporates, they begin to treat it as a tool that, used with intention, can open paths that previously seemed impossible. And for the first time, this person feels that the future is no longer a place of fear, but a field of choices. And all this begins with a simple habit: reserving before spending. Many people receive their salary and feel it disappears like water slipping through their fingers, and this creates the impression that the problem is money. When, in reality, the real obstacle is the way the relationship with their own salary was built over the years. When you begin to see money not as something that arrives and goes away, but as a partner that works alongside you, everything changes. The feeling of scarcity decreases, financial anxiety begins to lose strength, and for the first time, the idea emerges that perhaps there's a lighter, more conscious, and more efficient path to deal with financial life. And this transformation doesn't happen suddenly. It begins the instant you start giving purpose to every dollar that enters your account. When you clearly define what each part of the money should do, whether paying bills, investing, building reserves, increasing quality of life, or accelerating a future goal, you take the salary off autopilot and put it on a growth path. Money at this moment stops being just a value and becomes a tool, and tools, when well used, build big things. Over time, you begin to realize it's not about earning rivers of money, but about using what you already receive in a strategic, intelligent, and intentional way. People who prosper don't do magic. They make better choices. And the more you choose with awareness, the more your salary responds, grows, multiplies, and opens doors that previously seemed too distant. There's a crucial point in building wealth that almost no one talks about openly. Most people want quick results, but very few are willing to maintain simple habits long enough for these habits to transform their financial lives. The real secret is not in something extraordinary. It's precisely in what seems too common, too discreet, and even too boring for those who live seeking shortcuts. When you decide to do what most don't, like controlling expenses calmly, investing consistently, recording every financial movement, reviewing goals, adjusting routes, and repeating this process without complaining, you begin to create a huge advantage. Gradually, while others spend on impulse, live without planning, and stay on autopilot, you accumulate small victories that, added up, become enormous. Nothing changes overnight, but everything changes when you insist a little more than others. And it's precisely in this silent insistence that the difference is born. Those who learn to sustain discipline even on days when it seems heavy end up conquering what many desire but few achieve. Not because it's easy, but because it's rare to maintain focus when no one is watching. And that's what puts you, step by step, ahead. Money grows for those who have the patience to do the basics longer than most can bear. Want to continue? Let's go to the next topic. One of the biggest differences between those who prosper and those who live trapped in the same difficulties is the way each one sees their own money the moment it arrives. Most people spend their lives waiting for some amount to be left over to invest, save, or plan. But that moment never comes, because those who wait lose. Money always finds a spontaneous destination when you don't give it a conscious destination. The behavior of people who build wealth is completely different. They decide before the salary drops what will happen to every penny. They don't leave their financial future in the hands of chance. As soon as money enters, they separate the part that goes to investments, another for reserves, another for clear goals, and only then organize expenses and lifestyle within what's left. Never the opposite. This creates a structure where growth comes first and consumption comes later. And that's exactly what makes money begin to multiply. When you understand this logic, you realize that wealth doesn't depend on luck or a gigantic salary. It depends on priority. Those who decide first build the future. Those who leave it to the end always arrive late. And from the moment you start acting like this, something curious happens. There starts to be leftovers, not by miracle, but because you started giving intention to your money, and money responds to intention with organization, growth, and stability. Now we arrive at the point where everything connects. Up to here, you understood how someone who transforms little into much thinks. But just understanding doesn't change anything. What changes is having a clear, simple, and applicable map, capable of taking you out of financial improvisation and putting your life on a predictable growth path. And this map wasn't created for those who earn a lot. It works precisely for those who earn little because it was designed to build strength, not to depend on it. The first part of this map is the financial audit, a process many people avoid because they find it uncomfortable to look at their own reality. But those who want to prosper don't run from the truth, they face it. And when you put everything on paper, every expense, every subscription, every small habit that drains your money, you don't lose power, you recover it. It's at this moment you clearly see what stays and what goes. And when you remove what doesn't serve, you open space for what really matters. The second part is creating an emergency fund, something that seems impossible for those living on the edge, but that becomes completely viable when you separate before spending, even if it's a symbolic amount at the beginning. This fund is not luxury, it's freedom. It's what prevents any unforeseen event from destroying your month and throwing you into the indebtedness that drowns so many people. The third part is the golden rule, separating a fixed percentage of the salary at the exact moment it drops into the account. It's not about how much, it's about the habit. It's a decision that transforms the relationship with money because it puts you in control. When this separation becomes automatic, you create the discipline that sustains every form of wealth. The fourth part is continuously investing in skills that increase your income. This is not motivational, it's mathematical. You know, the more value you deliver. The more value you deliver, the more you earn. And when part of this increase is reinvested in new learning, you create a virtuous cycle that grows on its own, like a flame that feeds itself. And finally, the last principle of this map, reinvest your extra earnings before improving your lifestyle. This is the stage that separates continuous growth from eternal stagnation. People who transform the future don't reward themselves too early. They understand that money needs to work before it rests. Only after creating a solid foundation do they begin to live better. And when they do, they manage to maintain the standard without fear of falling. This map is the final answer. Minimum wage is not a prison. It's the first step. What transforms the trajectory is not the size of what you earn, but the size of what you decide to build. Now that you've made it this far, stop for a moment and take a deep breath. Think about everything that was said. These weren't empty promises, they weren't magic shortcuts. It wasn't that illusory talk of getting rich overnight. What you heard was a real path, tested, possible, and that only requires one thing, that you decide to walk. Because in the end, no one changes their life because they earned more. People change their lives when they learn to treat the little as seed, not as sentence. The difference between those who prosper and those who remain stuck in the same cycle is the courage to do the obvious that almost no one does. Organize, cut, separate, invest, and wait for time to work in your favor. And here's the most important truth of all. You're not alone on this journey. Every day, thousands of people start exactly like you, with a limited salary, with fears, with doubts, and yet they build something bigger than they imagined simply because they took the first step. Your salary doesn't define your future. Your behavior does. And from today, you already have a map, a method, and a mindset that can transform any amount into a starting point. Now, I want to make you a final request, but a request that really makes a difference. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this today. And of course, subscribe to the channel, because here you'll find, week after week, real strategies to build wealth in an intelligent, silent, and consistent way, the way that really works for those starting from zero. Thank you for watching until the end. And tell me in the comments, which part of this video opened your mind the most today?